We also want to understand all sides of every issue that we discuss. So a lot of people are very one-sided because they've only been fed one side of the matter. So there are going to be people here with different views on different subjects, and we want to be more tolerant of these views. We want to be less polarized, like Congress, for instance, and just get a good understanding. But knowing all sides to every issue that we discuss in here is going to help you build firmer beliefs. A lot of you have opinions and beliefs, but how concrete are those? How easily are your opinions changed? And you'll find out whenever we discuss these things. Some of you might be against gay marriage or for it. When we talk about it, you might change your mind. And these are the kinds of things that we want to do here. You're going to make some friends here, which is cool. Everyone loves having friends. But past that, we're going to talk about the structure for a second and how everything's going to work out. Each gathering will revolve around topics of controversy and interest. Abortion, drugs, gun rights, stuff like that. To kind of light a fire in all of you. Because if you're uninterested about a certain topic, maybe this will spark that interest. Each gathering is going to act as an open floor discussion. However, it will be explained and expected from the start that each gathering take place in a very orderly fashion. Everyone can't just talk at once. Nothing's going to work like that. So what will happen is I'll start the discussion with a critical thought question, a very broad one, and I'll look for a response. You'll raise your hand, and I'll acknowledge you, and you will give a response. After that, every person in the audience has the opportunity to either A, question that person, elaborate on what they said, or disagree with what they said. And whenever a discussion starts to get dull and the responses are lacking, I'll move on with another question. All gatherings will be proctored and speaking will be done in an organized process, such as anyone desiring to speak will raise their hand. Okay, we went over that. The president shall act as proctor for all gatherings, and in the president's absence, the vice president shall take his place. If you don't have one of those, need one of those, hit me up. Any direct insults and not misinterpreted language that someone took offense to, if your feelings get hurt easy, I'm sorry, but they will not be tolerated. No insults, no calling people stupid, none of that. The only time you can use the word stupid is if you're talking about the government, and I encourage that. If someone does make an insult, they'll be asked to leave and not return to the next meeting. We don't need that here. We need to keep it calm and peaceful. Any subject of interest that becomes so intense that it causes disorder amongst the club will be put up for debate. For instance, let's say abortion. We got half the audience is super against it, religious and all that. Well, what we'll do is we'll separate the two ideologies, and each group will have time to discuss things for their argument, to be able to argue against the other side. And each group will elect someone to come up here and debate. So say there's 20 of you over, 20 of you over there. Someone will come from each side, and we'll debate for probably about 20 minutes. And during the debate, I'll act as a proctor, and I will ask questions to criticize both sides. And once we get into the debates, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. Because that's kind of the goal of the debate. You want to scrutinize the other person for their argument. The argument is invalid. You want to point out fallacies. So when we do that, you'll be able to learn a lot of arguing skills. It'll help you in a lot of things, being able to argue. It's good, especially in relationships. There will be no designated time for the length of the debate. However, it must end at the halfway point of the meeting so the next topic on the agenda can be discussed. Also, at the end of every meeting, within the last 10 minutes, so everyone has opinions and input on what we're going to do next, I'm going to ask for suggestions for topics what we'll talk about next week. So in the last 10 minutes of the day, after we finish talking about drugs, we'll talk about drugs today. You guys can vote for same-sex marriage next time, gun rights, whatever. And over the course of the week between the meeting, you guys have the opportunity to email me questions that I should ask during the discussion. And each debate will be proctored by the president in the same fashion the open floor discussion is proctored. Members will have the opportunity to get their questions answered in the debate by emailing all their questions to the secretary, which is Brittany in the back, right there. She's awesome. So the proctor can ask the talking points. The proctor will take turns asking each debater questions. The person asking the question will have 80 seconds to respond, and the other debater will have an equal amount of time to counter. And after each debate, we're going to have an open floor discussion about the debate. You have the chance to ask each debater for each side of the ideology why they said this, or is this factual, and get a better understanding of how they're coming to this argument. And you guys have all been to Dr. Linz's lecture, right? Yeah? No? You guys should go? Okay, but so once every 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to have a special lecture within the club. And because during our discussions, we're going to be talking about very broad issues. You have a chance to submit a request for a time slot within the special lecture that we set to date. And you can pick any topic of your choice, however specific it may be, however extreme it may be. And this gives an opportunity to say, the entire half of this room wants to give different presentations, but we can do that in the hour span. And you can talk about really specific stuff like our intervention in Syria, intervention in Mali, you know, really discrete subjects to help inform people about subjects you care about. Because another goal of this club is to make sure we're all informed. As far as officer positions go within the club, since there will be no elections this semester for the clubs, I'm a dictator, each position will be appointed. If any appointee does not demonstrate the responsibility that is asked of them, they will be replaced. I need a treasurer, a vice president, and an SGA ambassador. The SGA ambassador serves as a representative of the club for the SGA and must attend all SGA meetings for this club to remain in good standing. The vice president will just be doing what I'm doing right now when I'm not here, but I will always be here. And then the treasurer comes up with incentives for people to attend gatherings and does it in a manner that budgets our funds appropriately. That's not a very hard job. So is there any questions about the structure and how this is going to take place? Someone just raise their hand and say something so we can kind of...
do we have a master debater?
I mean, I'm a master debater. I mean,
good. All right. You want a question?
But no, you guys will just pick random people to debate. If a certain group picks the same person every time, that's fine. But I encourage everyone to try and get up here and debate. Public speaking skills are very important in life. You want to be able to argue. It's cool. So now we've got that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and start on this week's topic, drugs. So I'm going to look for answers to the first question that I ask, and then you guys are going to respond to each other in the audience. Why are drugs legal?
The government doesn't make a profit on them.
Is that true? Does government really not make a profit on them? Sarah?
I think it's easier for the government to make a profit when they're illegal, because not only do they distribute drugs like underground that we don't know about, they also make money off of the arresting of people that possess these drugs that they distribute.
So do you?
She's got a point. Earlier in the last decade, 2001, 2002, 2003, there was a large bust where Tennessee state troopers were allowing vehicles to leave with money to go make a payoff, coming in with drugs, but not allowing them to leave with the payoff. So the drugs were coming in, getting circulated, and the payoff is when they were stopping the ring.
To make sure they get the money.
So the money would go into evidence and become part of the state troopers, the government, once it's been there for so long.
That's an excellent point. Does anyone have anything to elaborate on that? So I would argue that doesn't it cost more to imprison certain people, and the court cost of locking up these people for the drugs they're using? Do they really make money off that? Are there other ways, if it was legalized and regulated, could they make money?
Yeah. Aren't prisons now corporate enterprise? Aren't most prisons owned by corporations?
Yeah, they're privatized.
I don't think people would. Oh man, I'm high. I forgot what I was going to say.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
I ain't mad at you, man.
So, do you guys think that if the government regulated these drugs, they could make tax revenue off of it?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be more profitable than locking people up and cut spending in that area as well as raise revenue in the regulation?
Well, the entire thing of that was actually spawned by that Reefer Madness movie was because it would affect the hemp industry as well, and it would
affect the excuse me.
It was actually we talked about that one time. That was the hemp industry or some different corporations.
Yeah, the hemp industry.
Yeah,
and the pharmaceuticals.
By legalizing weed, it would actually affect those industries.
But I'm done now.
Okay, I'm going to give a microphone to each side of the room, and you guys can just kind of pass it around for people that are quiet. Got to make sure I can hear you.
All right, I've got a request if you're going to do that.
What's that?
Make sure that one stays on this side of the room and this one stays on this side of the room.
Got it. The guy with the hat right here, do not let this microphone go past him. Here you go.
I can help with that.
Awesome, Dr. Lynn. Thank you so much. All right, so is drug legalization similar to prohibition?
It's very similar to prohibition. After the 18th Amendment was passed, you saw the rise in gang violence with big name gangsters like Al Capone, because people are going to try to find a way around it. And the whole point in the idea of legalizing marijuana and other substances is that it would take out the middleman. With it legalized, there'd be no need for gangs. There'd be no need for any of that underground market. It could just be sold up front.
So you're suggesting that if it was legalized, there would be less crime because of the drugs?
Correct.
Does Does anyone agree or disagree with that statement?
I agree with it. I think there would be less drug users if all the drugs were.
I agree with that too, Sarah.
I agree because then they wouldn't be run by cartels. The drug rings wouldn't be run by cartels, so then that automatically eliminates a lot of crime.
That's a great point. Don't you think that if these drugs were legalized internationally, that we wouldn't have the problems in Latin America like we do?
Well, don't they kill people?
Yes, illegal drugs do kill people, but so do legal drugs.
Yeah, but the drug cartels kill people.
Yes.
The drug cartel does kill people. Yes.
In 2010, actually, I'm from South
Hands,
Texas.
please.
I'm from South Texas. I'm from on the border. And if your payload is seized, I mean, they will kill you no matter what side of the border you're on. The first beheading was actually in one of the first beheadings just read was in 2010. A man couldn't pay the 400 pounds of dope that was seized, and they beheaded him because he didn't have any money to pay it back.
And so you're arguing that legalization would stop these things from happening, and I totally agree with that. Eli. Excuse me, Eli. This guy raised his hand first.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Get it, Eli.
Elliot, I don't know if anyone is aware of this, but it's either Portugal or Paraguay. One has basically removed all illegalness, of
Spain and Portugal.
recreational drugs, and the last I read about it, they have reported lower numbers of admitted drug users than in the past, and they have also had lower crime rates than they used to.
So there's statistical data to prove the theory that you guys have that legalizing drugs would calm down crime rates.
That makes it law.
Elliot? You have something to say?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, just saying that the entire statement of legalizing drugs is an entirely broad statement, or is that what we're discussing right now? Drugs as a giant pie, or are we discussing because you have to take the individual social and physical dangers of each individual drug into account?
Well, that's what we're going to do with this discussion. Is you guys can either decide to separate these drugs into specific regulations, or together. I personally agree that we should have them all together. But that's the whole point of this discussion, is to get every single aspect.
Is it not a personal property issue?
Well, it's personal property if it's legal, but
If it's your body.
But get it.
I got sidetracked.
You want me to keep going?
I was thinking about what he was saying, and I kind of got lost.
It's fine. Just a second.
Sorry, man.
Like, I'm okay with natural substances, marijuana, things like that. That's totally fine. But I've been out of Tennessee for the past 6 years, but like I remember hearing stuff about meth being made in houses and blowing up and harming those children that are living in those houses. What about harder drugs like that are not okay for children at the house and can harm their neighbors and stuff? What about those kind of drugs?
Well, don't you think that there could be laws against having those things at homes in certain spots rather than having them completely illegalized?
Also, with the prohibition of those substances, it's pushed it underground. So people are forced to make it out of the back room of their trailer or the back seat of their car because they can't be caught with it openly. So it has pushed it underground to where it is again.
Those kind of drugs kind of
Let's keep it in order, guys, please.
Going back to what she said, I lived in El Paso for about 4 months, and Juarez, across the border, is the murder capital of the world. It goes past Somalia, North Korea, everywhere. It is the most dangerous place in the world. And across the border, El Paso is the safest city in America with over 500,000 citizens. Now, the thing is that the cartel is a business. That's their end goal. They're not evil people doing evil things because they like evil. They're making a profit. And if it's good for business to kill people in America, they'll kill people in America. If it's bad for business, they won't kill people in America.
So are you saying that if we had it legalized in America, it'd be bad for their business and would keep less cartel out of America?
If we legalized it worldwide, it'd be bad for business because we hate businesses that, like, even Apple, they were under scrutiny for using slave labor in China. So if we were like, hey, these cartels are killing people, we wouldn't buy their product if there was another brand out there.
I see.
Over here.
Hi. I would like to respond to the meth and the harder drugs comment. Is that people are going to use those drugs anyways and put those children in harm, and that if drugs were legal, there would be more education and the effects on that, and people would be more likely to not do those drugs. Not.
So you're saying we can take the money that we spend on enforcing these drug laws and redistribute it into education? Instead of penalizing them for it, we can use that money to teach kids about it, to straighten them away from it.
I think that it'd be good to use it for education and to also use it for rehab programs to help people that are addicted. They'd be more likely to admit their addictions if it weren't illegal and to seek help.
So it would be beneficial in a social way as well, on top of the fiscal responsibility of it, right here.
Not to mention, we talk about costing the government money, or as opposed to not costing it money, whether it's legal or illegal. Filling up the prisons with nickel and dime crackheads and meth users and marijuana and potheads is costing the government millions.
They're very useless for the prisons.
I guess I want to stick to her comment earlier. For the most part,
go ahead, bud.
Okay, I'm sorry. For the most part, those of us that are worried about drugs think of people showing up to work high or driving down the road high as hell. But if you think about it, there are going to be regulations just like on alcohol. You don't show up to work drunk. I mean, this guy, he does his thing, but that's not going to be the case.
I'm fully functional.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, what I'm saying is there's going to be regulations, and people are going to have to do it at home. They're going to have to face consequences for being irresponsible. However, it's going to cut down on usage anyway. And I'm strong on Darwinism myself. The way I look at it is, if someone wants to go blow their brains out with cocaine and ruin their lives, fine, less competition in the market.
Okay, this is a really great point that I want to respond to with a question to ask you guys. Do you think that a lot of the reasons that we have lobby groups telling politicians not to have drugs is because the general consensus of our populace is uninformed? They don't know what routes we can take to make drugs easier on people or alternative methods. So do you think that if we had these alternative methods instilled in these people and they were educated rather than indoctrinated, we would make progress on this?
I don't know what the control is for your computer, but I think that you should show the Reefer Madness video from 1936. That was actually that was released to show the effects of marijuana, which you all probably get a laugh at if you put it on.
You guys can go watch it at home, but let's try and keep this on discussion for right now. If you want to, on a special lecture, you're more than welcome to give a presentation about it and your opinions on it.
Can I just quickly comment on the get high at work, get high at home thing, don't get high at work. A story of a Vietnam vet that I read, he said that when he went over there at 18 years old, the first day there, he was in action and saw one of his best friends get his brains blown out. And he didn't know how to deal with it. Somebody came out and saw him outside the gate and said, "Hey man, you don't want to sit out here and think about this." He said, "Here, strap this." He gave him a doobie, and the guy fired the doobie up, smoked it. And from then on, he recognized, and everybody there agreed that those other drugs were already being used. Are opium, LSD. People were drinking while they're, weapons in their hands fighting war. They're drinking, they're drunk. I mean, they're trying to cope with what's going on. He
said, encourage.
He said that the ones that got up every morning on time, did their job, never had to worry about having to be back in a firefight with the guys that smoked pot. Not the drunks, not the LSD heads, the potheads. They were reliable, calm, cool, collected, and reliable.
Eli.
Just to kind of address the misuse of the prison system as far as drug users. This is just sort of a general question, but what if there was a system put in to where instead of imprisoning people caught with, harder drugs or just any drug in general that's not legal, what if instead of just automatically putting them in prison and banishing them away, what if we gave them the option of, go to rehab or pay a fine or something like that instead
we do.
of just putting them in prison? And
we actually have those things. It's called drug court, and almost every state has those. But this leads me to my next question. Does the government have the right to tell us what to put in our body? Does the government even have the right to get involved in those things, to put us in rehab or put us in prison? What is the efficacy in that? In the back.
When the same government ends up paying for the damage that those drugs cause, then yes, they have the right to tell you what you can and cannot do.
But should the government be responsible for paying for any of that? Anything drug-related at all? What else do they pay for? Can you elaborate on your point?
Health care, uninsured health care.
Not today.
On a whole other issue.
No, I'm just saying that's part of it.
Yeah.
Is a lot of people who go two hospitals, because of drug-related incidents, don't have insurance. Therefore, the social welfare of America is having to pay for that.
We're going to talk about social welfare another day, but right here, she's starting.
Okay, I'm sorry, because I walked up in here a little later.
You're okay, don't worry.
Missed up on the conversation. So it's about like legalizing drugs. Just is it a specific drugs or just drugs?
It's not about anything specific, legalizing or anything like that. It's about drug policy, your opinions on it, and the responses to the questions and comments we're making here.
Okay. Just my comment as far as drugs itself. And why are you recording me?
I won't.
Because I came in when you were talking about Portugal. Like I wanted to visit Portugal because they have legalized all their drugs and the numbers have gone down. I'm not a drug user at all. I'm all for like legalizing some of the drugs. And when they put like a limit on things that you can and cannot have, I think that's where the issues come into play. Like we have all these medical drugs. You know, now people are so hooked on opium because it's legal that you have a prescription, but once you start buying it out of somebody's house, that's when it becomes illegal, and that's when we start having these problems because they start to legalize some things, and like some of the things are not illegal. But so how do you? Where is the line?
1 second. All the people coming in right now, you can sign up on the sign-up sheet in the back by Brittany to give you emails about what we're doing. Continue.
So I guess I was with the other person who says, like, where do you draw the line as to when it's legal and not legal, and what can be legalized?
Well, let's get some opinions on where that line is from everyone in here. Where is the line?
As far as where the line goes, he spoke. He said, "When is it the government's responsibility?" The question was asked, was it the government's responsibility at all to be involved in those kind of decisions?
That was the original question, but right now we're going to elaborate on where the line is for government to be involved. Is it legalize everything? Legalize everything?
Decriminalize would be a better way because illegalizing still has a connotation of the government's involvement.
I agree with that. Let's get some other opinions on this.
I'm going to agree with Blake completely on that. I think personal liberty comes into play onto this. When you have the government telling you what you can and cannot possess and what you can and cannot intake into your body, it becomes an issue of personal liberty. And when does your liberty become eroded because of the welfare of the group as a whole or because of certain special interests? And I think it's ultimately an issue of personal liberty.
So are you saying that if me doing drugs affects someone else negatively, what does that even matter because I have the right to do that as a person?
Yes.
I think that is very immoral, but you make a really good point because when we sacrifice liberty for safety, it's temporary, and ultimately we never get that liberty back. And that's exactly what he's getting at. And does anyone else have any comments on this? People in Miss Mandeville's class, I would love to hear from you guys in this half discussion. We're talking about drugs.
Thank you for both. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to re-ask the question so you guys can get in this discussion. Does the government have the right to tell us what to put in our body? And do they have the right to play any role in it? And if so, where is that line drawn? Where should government be involved at? Opinions? All right, we'll move forward.
That's the thing. People don't really know what they want, and they're not going to draw a line because there are bad people out there.
So what are you suggesting?
People don't draw lines. They want to do the bad.
Well, we as people, very subjectively and individually, draw lines for ourselves as far as our morals go. But where does the government draw the line? Where is your opinion on what government should be doing in the situation of drug policy?
Government, they don't even know me except for a number. They only know me as a number. They don't know me as a person.
Awesome. If there's any other responses to this particular question, raise your hand. My man in the back.
I just want to say the government puts stuff in our bodies all the time, the GMOs and the fluoride in our water, and there's like 70% GMO, genetically modified foods in our grocery stores.
Booster shots?
That's a great argument. They put stuff in our body already, and we don't even know half the stuff they put in our body. What gives them the right to tell us to stop putting drugs in our body?
Lithium's in our water, like our water supplies.
Lithium is an awful antidepressant.
Aren't all the drugs that are legal, including alcohol, producing way more negative effects than anything that's illegal?
That goes to my next question. It's, what makes cocaine different than morphine? Morphine is awful. You get physically dependent, mentally dependent. It damages your liver. And cocaine is not even near as dependent of a drug as morphine. You're more likely to be addicted to these pharmaceuticals than you are to these illegal drugs. What's the difference?
The difference is there's a pharmaceutical lobby in our government that ensures that those drugs stay on the market and that those drugs are prescribed. That's the difference.
That is the reasoning, yes, but there is no real difference is the point. They just pay the politicians to do that, which is something as a grassroots organization, which this club pretty much is, we should be fighting that. And, you know, I really hope that you guys leave here today with that kind of ideology.
Good job, Jeremy. Actually, I would like to disconcern that because Coca-Cola used to be made out of cocaine. Coca-Cola is delicious.
But Coca-Cola was never made out of morphine.
It was even better back then.
Someone else, pass you on the mic.
I feel a lot of the difference between your example, cocaine and morphine, is just public opinion and like what we see it as, what people portray it as. When you think of morphine, you think of, oh, someone has been hurt, they need a painkiller. When you think of cocaine, you think of somebody snorting lines off of a coffee table.
In a suit.
I mean, it's a lot of it is just public opinion and portrayal.
That is exactly what it is, and it's because we've been indoctrinated to have a certain opinion.
I have a friend that he used to be a heroin addict, and he got clean, and now he's been on methadone for 12 years. You know, so how the sense that it's legal to do methadone and it's not legal to do heroin, which the methadone is worse on his body and worse for him than the heroin had been. Like, I don't know. That's the only difference in it.
The methadone was supposed to be an alternative to his addiction, but it turned out to be a worse addiction.
It did. It did.
How is it worse?
The physical aspects of it are just, it makes you just as sick and hurts your body just as much as heroin, if not more.
I'm going to respond to Ms. Vanderbilt and say that in the terms of pure, clean heroin, we know a lot more about opium, and it is a much longer existing drug than what they have in methadone. The chemicals used to make methadone are not as well studied. We don't know all the side effects, sort of like Adderall and Vyvanse. We don't know the side effects. So we can't just assume that this alternate addiction is going to be better for the person than the illegal drug. They want to get you off of it because it's illegal. Oh, I kill you.
Everyone knows about spice, right? It's the man-made form of weed. It causes, I mean, you've all seen the video of the guy in Florida eating the dude's face off because it was doing spice. The pharmaceutical drugs are the same way. It's experimental chemicals, whereas like weed and opium, we already know what it can do, and the formula hasn't changed.
I'm gonna have to go up. I have
Every time, man. Every time.
All right.
Yeah, I just want to point out one. We were pointing out chemicals being put in our bodies. Of course, they're doing agriculture every day. They're also doing fracking the oil out of the ground, and it's putting many chemicals in our water, which they've proven for time and time again. And the only reason we haven't done anything about that is because of the money. So I follow the money. All right. Also, we have in Gallatin alone a big problem with pain medicine. We have a lot of people dealing pain medicine, and it's very easy to attain. There were laws put in place for medicines like OxyContin to be promoted for people that were in like situations where they were dying. Right. And however, doctors have pushed that law and kind of ignored it, and they've been giving out that kind of pain medication for many cases that aren't as severe. There's a pain clinic in Gallatin or in the surrounding areas that do give out pain medicine for situations that do not need it.
Like a bulging disc, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. So many times we have very, very strong pain medications that are unnecessary. Being circulated in Gallatin is a way to get high, and they're being traded, and it's coming straight from the pain clinic. But that market will not be touched because of the money. that is being given to the medical field.
I want to respond to that real quick and say that an equal amount of money could be made for the drugs that we've legalized.
Right.
But right here.
That's exactly what I was going to go off of. Is anyone that argues that the drug war is in the vested interest of the people is obviously oblivious to everything that we're speaking of. You're talking of chemicals that are in the water. You're talking about drugs that are consumed from the pharmaceutical industry that are legal. You're talking about alcohol and tobacco, which are both harmful and are both illegal. I think the true reason for the drug war is the maintenance of social control, because through the drug war you're able to criminalize a group of individuals that are deemed unnecessary. You're able to establish government agencies such as the DEA, and you're able to fill up the prison. So I think arguably it's when most people think of drugs, they think of it as an issue of public health, but I think ultimately it's an issue of social control.
But what's the point of this mass
Amen.
spending on the DEA, drug enforcement? What's the point of that? What do they get out of filling up our prisons and not having room for illegal immigrants and murderers?
Obedience.
What do they achieve by this?
What's the? I'm sorry, my mind went a different direction. This brought up an idea that the idea that certain states are legalizing marijuana, and the federal government comes in and negates that by raiding a man's farm in Montana, and he's facing 80 years. Does anybody understand the apparent hypocrisy there? I mean, I don't understand how a state can make it legal and the government can come into that state and still arrest somebody for doing what his state said was legal.
That's a power struggle between the state and federal government. We're going to get into that later in the semester.
In legal terms, the state's individual constitution can override the federal laws.
Can it? Can it really? Can it? The federal government can't come in and shut it down?
It can't, but it's supposed to be able to.
There you go.
The fact of the matter is that those states that have legalized marijuana, the federal government is infringing on